And I would say that's a really good match, depending on what the
Uh,
first map will look like. I don't know. Major's not been looking that great in Legacy of the Void.
no, he's not been the unstoppable foreign Terran that he once was. I'm actually favoring Snoot in that matchup, and Snoot was on a bit of a downtrend, but lately has kicked it up a notch, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. This is the IM Katowice, round of 32. Pretty much $6,000 on the line for this best of 5, biggest show match of your life. Spawning the bottom left, it's going to be the blue Protoss, Harstem.
In the bottom right, as the red Terran, he's MaSa.
So discussing with Zombie up during the break, and I know someone's gonna be like, Rifkin's whining, but that's not the point of what I'm about to say. We've done 8-hour casts recently, 7-hour casts. Like, it's not too big of an issue. The Ting double elimination qualifies for Europe with some of the biggest casting we've done in a while. But again, like the downtime is what makes all this stuff crazy. Like, we're throwing 2-minute ad breaks between games, not because we want to like use and abuse and make billions of cents, because we won't even off these series, but it's just like there's so much downtime between games. There's so much downtime between series. That's what makes casting really difficult when there's just nothing to do, I suppose you could say.
Oh yeah.
So we're starting to feel the burn of this, and I gotta tell you, if this had started at like 10 a.m. for me and went till like 10 p.m., that's fine. But this started at 3 a.m. for me. So that's why I think for me, I don't know about you, but that's for me why I'm starting to wind down pretty hard here before we're quite done with the cast.
Mm. It's just the long breaks, and it's taking me out of the swing of things. All right.
Yeah.
Hate it. So MaSa did end up losing that last game, and not because of his build necessarily, but tank pushes can be really difficult to make work against Protoss. They usually have to be in very abusive positions. Tanks in general can never be out in the open, and they do require a little bit of that snowball effect, so really scaring your opponent and then getting the good position, and then your opponent just never really being able to tell if they can take you on or not, so you kind of continue to reinforce that position. Harstem was very, very scared. He got to a point where he was defending against all the abusive positions. He pre-broke down the back rocks. MaSa didn't get to go over to the left side of the map, and he would catch the tanks when they were in the open. They actually were not abusing that ledge when he went for the attack.
So to be completely honest, I'm actually a little bit surprised and yet sad simultaneously with MaSa. Just speaking of mentioning his build, he's someone I would have expected to be watching games with, say, like folks like Reality and Alive and the Korean Terrans who have been doing all these one-base builds that have been dominating and devastating Protoss. Whether it's Magfield accelerators with Cyclones, or maybe it's Hellions, because of course they take that extra hit from the Adepts to kill now. Like I'm just thinking back on it, but I realized like every time we've seen MaSa, it's been 2 bases every single time. And
Yeah, he loves his two base.
yeah, I feel like the one base is a lot stronger for what the current game has. But I just commenting on this one step further on the tank drops. I can't recall a time where we've seen tank drops be so effective on a stream. Like, we've seen them work, but I've never been a time where I've been like, oh man, that's so broken. All Terrans should do this all the time, always. Like, I still feel very strongly that Widowmines have the superior advantage, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah. It's a very different style of play to go for Widowmines. Widowmines complement that constant moving around, just like Medivacs do, but tanks is more of that brute force, like, I'm gonna get in your face really quickly, which can work against some Protosses, but Harstem was, I think, prepared from the get-go on that map, because that is a pretty popular style on that map. It's also a pretty popular style in Laralac, where you still have that little ledge that you can target the assimilator down with. Like where the Marines are going right now.
This is kind of cute. This is MaSa, of course, but we were talking a little bit before last time we saw him, where gets a little bit aggressive, pushes out early with a handful of Marines, and some don't expect it. Unfortunately, not quite going to work out here.
No. Harstem actually goes for a very quick third base. Now, this would be tricky if MaSa was prepping his tanks right now, for instance, and he saw this and was just like, oh, I'm going to go, right? Because Dim has actually had pretty good time to attack. But he's not really prepping for like a big push. You get a Cyclone, which can be used offensively. It's just
it's more defensive
it's not,
than anything else.
yeah, it's not gonna use any angle of attack or anything like that. And now the tank production starts. So Harstem here, his goal is to get the economy up just in time and the production up too just in time to have a big flood of production while MaSa pushes in on the natural, because you can never just push in like, immediately on a Protoss when you go for tanks, or a Zerg, of course, because there's creep spread. You have to actually kind of leapfrog forward. So Harstem knows he has time. Still doesn't make the push easier to hold, knowing how much time you have, because one mistake, one misclick on the hold button, or the Cyclone gets a couple of key units, and you're in trouble.
Yeah. Now, Liberty unfortunately can't do too much, and usually when you set this up, the Stalkers will deal with it pretty quickly. Usually will bleed out 1 or 2 for it, and that's still kind of value at the end of the day. But Blink finishing up here in just a moment. This Liberator may not get any use whatsoever. We'll find out.
Mm.
Back at home, though, production kicking in for MaSa, throwing down extra barracks, get those reactors added on. Surprisingly to see this instead of party on tech labs. But again, if you're producing tanks, you don't need Marauders as badly. But Marauders still eventually you're going to want to have in the army.
Yeah. MaSa just loves this 2-base push. I think Orbital, it's like 50-50. I think the other way you play an Orbital is that fast 3rd CC and up to Liberators, or the 2-tank push. If you're Korean, I guess you go for a 1 base, but this Marine's a little funky seeing.
He gets through everything, and he actually scouts the 3rd. If he killed Chrome, that would have been amazing, but nice done.
But Lair Lack is definitely something we see a lot of 2 bases on in all matchups. Just makes sense, especially in these positions. Now, going right past the Observer with 2 medevacs is not the ideal start, but...
Well, he did snipe off the Observer in the base, which is why he probably felt safe to just do that. Yeah, Harstem should be positioned to deal with this. He's going to put some pylons down, too, to make sure he's got those overcharges available. And let's not forget he does have Blink, so mobility is not going to be an issue. In fact, the best thing to do with these Stalkers is to hang back a bit so you can blink forward and snipe off the medevacs. And, yeah, MaSa sees that, so he's not going to go in. Scans the natural base. This does give leeway for a bit of Liberator action.
Yep. MaSa, there's a tank production again. I was wondering about that. He should be moving out with his entire army all grouped together soon with combat shields finishing up. And Harstem, I think, is going to be prepared for this. His economy is very good at 57, maybe like 1 or 2 more probes, especially if he gets his gas geysers up, which he doesn't need right now. And just getting that production up, so he's going to be on 7 gateways. This last one finishing up is pretty good. He does need to note that the push-outs is on the way, though, and it's not going to be about the drops, because he will want all of his units in the correct position, of course. Second Observer does die, and that will limit his scouting.
Yeah. I am curious what Harstem's going to do for the next step, though, because it does feel like the game almost becomes a little bit reactionary to seeing what's out. Like right now, Mass, Adepts, and Immortals will do well versus Marines and Tanks. But where do you take it to the next step? Are you going to go for Tempest because you're hella worried about Liberators? Do you go for Storms because it covers everything? Do you go for Colossus because in a weird, inadvertent way, they're a counter to Liberators? You know, like, there's a lot of different ways to play the matchup out. And in days of old, Harstem was really good at actually baiting people into the wrong compositions. But nowadays, it feels like Protoss is the one's constantly baited the wrong direction. And I hope that doesn't happen here too much.
So Harstem trying to meet the army before they can get into this ledge is not a bad idea whatsoever. He was on a good economy and he had a pretty even army supply with upgrades on the way. It gets a little awkward, however, as he's just barely not able to do it, but now he's going to try and use the concave on those tanks. They could have been sent to the high ground, but it was a little too far away. The Cyclone even comes in to help. But
they're being bussed from all sides. Now, the Bio might win out versus the Stalkers afterwards, but a lot of the Immortals still alive. The Stalkers just have to take out the Liberators before going down, and that's their job. That's their duty. And the army supply ends up being pretty balanced. Normally, we see this tip heavily in the favor of the Terran player because, of course, you pick up, you retreat, you retain those units. But not able to do that here. He actually lost a lot in the fight. And it's going to push forward. Once again, Harstem's barriers are all on cooldown, so it's a little bit difficult to snipe off the Immortals. But this ends up being pretty decent. Both sides just kind of walk away.
well, Harstem with a 3rd base does look better in a macro game, so I think he's been feeling pretty good about being able to push that back, because that could have been worse. It actually ended up being pretty good. They're like 30 seconds away from each of their upgrades. Harstem +1, MaSa getting that other +1, and of course Harstem would have also had charge if he wanted to wait, but it's not like he had a heavy zealot count anyways. He was actually mostly adepts right then and there, but we'll probably want to switch over since he bothered getting charge.
Maybe.
MaSa still continuing with the Liberator production. It is a lot like that last game where he's just gonna have to all in again and lift up his main command center and take a third. Harstem does not have a Warp Prism this game or Dark Templars, so that is I think the key difference here. The Dark Templars never really did harassment, so like MaSa didn't have to worry about that. But it was just the Warp Prism in general ended up doing a lot of harassment, ended up tearing him apart and killing all the SCVs with adept warp-ins.
So granted, it was in a PvP more recently, but Harstem showed some really great high Templar control when it came to using storms, and that was, of course, that Pre-on-Terrace game where he fought versus Mana. I can only imagine if he applies even half the amount of control he did to those Templar in that game to this one, his Templar should be an excellent choice following this up. It may just be Archons right off the bat because he could use some immediate reinforcements, but I think with the amount of Zealots he currently has, going to Storm is not out of the question. Just kind of casually and calmly, coolly do it.
Well, once again, doesn't want MaSa to be able to siege up next to his natural, so we'll be kind of posturing down that ramp. We have a Ghost Academy on the way for MaSa, who just really seems like he's convinced he can play a macro game with 2 bases, which he's not doing a bad job of, so I'm not like critiquing him too hard.
By the way, chat saying everyone's seeing us offline. That's strange because like the stream's definitely working. It's just the status that's offline for some reason.
Huh.
XSplit says 0 viewers, but Twitch says 2,500, and we got knocked off the Team Liquid calendar. So I'm not going to do it now. I don't want to ruin the game. But after this game is completed, I am going to try restarting the stream, and we'll see if that fixes whatever the issue is.
Well, that's odd.
That is very odd. Now the Adepts, of course, just scouting more than anything else. We've got those Archons warped in immediately as predicted, but Harstem is still at this time where the Ghosts aren't here. There's no EMPs. This army out of MaSa is certainly scary, but I feel like a Concave could do it. And that's what he's going to do. He's going to go for it. Now, of course, he's got to focus on the Liberators with the Stalkers before they die. That's their goal. Before they get picked off, do as much air-to-air damage, ground-to-air damage as possible. But Harstem, despite bleeding out these Liberators, just gets wasted on the ground.
Yeah, that bio army, I think like the first time you look at an army like that, it looks like the tanks are the biggest deal, and I think for the first push it was, but for the second push, MaSa's grandstanding bio army was actually a lot scarier, and didn't really have that much of an answer. The charge lots got evaporated, the Adepts didn't really help out. This is where Storm would have been really useful, but Harstem's not out of it yet. He's only down 20 army supply, and that's just simply maybe like a sandwich or a concave, or again a Warp Prism, we do not see.
If he hasn't used it yet, if he's got a Guardian Shield on top of his upgrade lead, he doesn't take much damage from the bio. But that's the problem. It's not the bio that's been killing him, it's these Liberators. These Zealots are supposed to be able to take hits for days, but they can't because the Liberator just takes them down like one shot at a time.
Yeah. This Immortal is really wanting to get that last tank and just not able to get it. Now Harstem is not down 20 supplies, down 30 and more, and this is looking quite dangerous. Remember that MaSa just lifted his main base, so he is actually mining pretty healthily. Not as much as Harstem was, but now with the probes going down and the saturation going so low for Harstem, he is.
Yeah, I mean, MaSa be able to lift off and go over to the third. That's cool. It keeps his economy on par with that of Harstem, but it's funny because once again, I don't know about the tanks in this game, but the Liberators for sure have been doing work.
I think maybe Harstem going for Storm might have worked out better. Like the Liberators have been doing a lot of work, but it was like the bio on the ground was so close to dying with a couple of storms added on. Then the charge lots, they actually kill the units as soon as they hit them with their body, because of course they body slam now. That might just be it for Harstem. GG.
All right, series gets tied up 1-1, and